Hello designers, this is Rebecca, and this is your Assignment 3 Mid-Century Modern Hero Heroine Assignment Critique. So let's just check out the specs one more time before we get started. Using Adobe Photoshop, you're going to create a portrait of the hero or heroine of your novel, incorporating elements inspired by the mid-century modern movement. The required specs are a 6 by 9 inch CMYK portrait format image. You need to retouch the figure. It needs to be shot yourself specifically for this project. You need to choose a color scheme from the swatch library in Photoshop. You must include texture effects specifically covered in this section, and text is optional, but if you do use text, it must be from this font options list provided below in this document. So let's get started. First up is Christine. Christine's novel is Paper Towns. So I see a lovely halftone effect here, and that's definitely making it feel more mid-century or aged a bit. And I see that you kind of collaged some images together, sort of Paul Rand style. So I think that this might be sort of like a magazine cover, but I'm not totally sure. And it doesn't need to be a magazine cover. But the composition feels a bit unbalanced. So I recommend centering your subject more and maybe even making your subject larger in scale. You have room to do that. You can also move that street sign if you'd like to. You can make it even smaller to give it some perspective, especially if the subject is larger, then it would make the street sign kind of feel further in the background. Um, the word discover at the top, I see what you're doing by left aligning it and giving that street sign some space. So that's cool. You could also, though, if you make the street sign smaller or lower it, either one, you don't have to do, you know, it's up to you. Um, I would make that, I would at least center that title along the top or make it the font larger to extend across it, sort of like with the vintage travel posters. The Finding You Whichever Way um, could also use some more attention. The text inside, there's room to make it larger in that green box and make your line spacing a little shorter. Um, the placement of it is also, it just feels a bit random, whereas the mid-century modern artists, the composition felt random, but there was a lot of math and grids behind it. So just find once you if you change the scale of your subject and after you change the placement of your subject, just kind of rearrange that, move that the quote there or the finding you whichever way text and green screen behind it so that it makes the composition feel more balanced. So it might be anchoring down at the bottom corner, maybe along the bottom. You might change the shape of the box or in the text layout. Just experiment and see, what looks best. Okay, thank you so much. Next up is Diane. Diane did Robinson Crusoe. So I love this black and white with spot color treatment that you did for your photo. It looks fantastic. I also really like her hands and the lizard, kind of coming out of that round frame. And you have this texture in the background with the plants that looks nice. So yeah, and overall, you have a nice earthy color palette. That's really great. So I recommend not choosing a bevel and emboss effect for these shapes and text. It's the bevel and emboss effect kind of came out in the 80s, like late 80s, early 90s, um, when they started applying effects on computers. I'd say 90s more. So it makes it feel a bit dated, and it's not the right time. It's not the right era. You know what I mean? So get rid of those effects there. They don't need to be there. The shapes for mid-century modern were definitely more flat, like these beautiful circles that you have here. The other thing I recommend is making your subject larger and then cropping it with this circle here so that you don't see the straight line of the bottom of the photo. Um, so yeah, there's room to make her even larger and then just shave off So it's like a nice round circle. So she looks like part of her is in this colored, this centered circle here, and then it gets the bottom of her gets cropped by this second circle, but leaving the hands, and her head may even come out a bit too once you enlarge it, but it'll look really cool. I promise. I promise. All right, great. You can also go larger with this text. Why not? Just go big. You have all this space up here. Okay. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Kelvin. Kelvin did Crazy Rich Asians. This is a great image here. I see some Alexei Brodovich similarities, and I really like the double exposure effect. So, yeah, and the composition looks really nice. I like the large Empower text across the top, looks lovely, and the script down here at the bottom is very mid-century. This little combination looks really nice. So the only things, and I love this green in the background, lovely. So the only thing I recommend is either decide to have the word empower behind her completely and have her opacity be 100%, or vice versa, have the word empower be across her at 100% opacity. Okay, so they're back when in the mid-century they didn't really have a lot of options for making text, for changing the opacity of text. Okay, so you don't usually see it. So you see the figure completely over it or the text completely over the figure. The other thing is the line spacing between these two lines of text is just a bit too tight. We don't want these descenders running into our ascenders. So just give yourself a little bit more space and you're good to go. But great choices. All of this looks wonderful. Thank you so much. Next up is Violet. Violet did the Hunger Games, and this is a really great portrait. Awesome job with your model's expression. She's looking very tough, very Katniss. So really nice here. I like these painter effects that you added, that you applied. It looks wonderful, really beautiful. The trees in the background looks great. Really good job laying out your text. The font looks really nice. Yeah, everything looks fantastic. Good color scheme. Great work. I love that you didn't have just plain white too as well. That's a really, really nice touch. Great job, Violet. Way to go. Next up is Valeria. Valeria did Love in the Time of Cholera. So I see a heavy Saul Bass influence here. And I like the hand-drawn flower, looks really nice. And your black and white photo is very adorable. So, and I love this text, this font choice. It's really nice. So the only things I recommend changing are that this Courageous screen down here, it has a stroke on it. And so does the one above it. So you don't need a stroke. So go ahead and get rid of that. And then it's just a very tiny stroke, but we don't need that. And I think you should move the head over a bit to the left. It's just a little too far to the right, so that there's more of a relationship between the flower and the face, by putting them a little closer together. And then the text placement feels a bit random as well. So I don't think you need, if you wanted to have vertical text, I would have it outside of these shapes, nice and huge down the side. So that would mean making these shapes a little smaller or narrower, and then making the word courageous just be nice and big down here, taking up that whole screen. If you don't want to change the size of these shapes and put the strong on the outside, then just make strong in lowercase, and have it be the same as the courageous text, and just balance the placement a little bit more, okay? And then I don't believe in your title that in, the, and of are capitalized. So just make sure that you make those lowercase. In might be, but I'm not sure if it is. So just double check on that, and then you're good to go. Thank you so much. Next up is Andres. Andre did Judo Boy, and I'm getting some Paul Rand influence here. I like what you did with the block over the eyes, and this is a great photo. I love the perspective. It's really great, and the motion in it, it looks wonderful. So really nice work there. You got a nice texture here. Um, I do recommend more contrast. Like the mid-century modern stuff was very high contrast. So I want to see some white in here. I know you have a texture over it, but maybe just let the texture be over the background and then your subject be in the foreground to get that white to pop more. Or if you can, still have the texture be over it, but just make this photo a higher contrast with true whites in it and then true blacks in the shadows. It'll just make it pop a lot more. But other than that, I love the layout. It all looks really nice. Thank you. Next up is Tate. Tate did the kite runner. And this is a lovely photo. I love that you went out into the desert. Look at these beautiful clouds on this day. And I'm wondering if you added these clouds or if that was really what it looked like that day. It's fantastic. You lucked out. Um, so I see that you did like a sepia tone, and none of the artists that we studied in this section applied sepia tone. It was more punchy colors and or black and white with punchy colors. So I recommend instead of the sepia tone, you can have it be all black and white and then maybe color the kite and the figure, uh, maybe the same color, maybe different primary color, something like that, to separate it from the background because this kite is getting a bit lost in the sky color and cloud color. So that would make it definitely feel more mid-century modern. Okay, thanks so much. Next up is Julianne. Julianne did the book 1984. This is so cool. I love it so much, Julianne. You really, it feels like you mixed all of the artists together. So we've got some like Sippy Pinellas in there. We've got some Paul Rand with all these shapes. I feel like we've got some Saul Bass with like the dramatic imagery. And I love it. Really nice um, choices in your layout. And even though it does feel a bit random, it still is balanced and structured nicely. I love the darkness that you pulled out into these images together. Just really cool, kind of fading into this blackness. It's really neat. And how dark you got these shadows in the faces. So cool. I also love this halftone pattern at the bottom. This gradient coming up is really beautiful. And I love how these black numbers fade into this black shape, how this text overlaps this shape as well. Just really cool. I don't think you need a bevel and emboss effect on this shape down here. That's the only thing that's kind of throwing it off. With mid-century modern, we kind of want our shapes to be pretty flat. They didn't have a bevel and emboss kind of option back then. That came out in the 90s, and that's not the era we're in, right? But other than that, and I also love the color, the little bit of color up here in the figures. Fantastic work. Way to go, Julianne. Next up is Cheyenne. Cheyenne did the Crone one, and I'm seeing some Paul Rand influence here. Lovely texture in the background, and this is very dramatic with the black and white and red. It looks really good. I like this effect you did with the text too. That's really neat. And this quote down here in red looks really cool. So this feels nice and balanced. Um, it's kind of like it's showing it seems like it's showing your heroine's like two sides. So that's nice. The only thing I recommend, let's see. So this photo feels a little blurry to me. So you may want to use your sharpen tools just a bit, and you can selectively sharpen by using the sharpening tool itself, not the sharpen command. And so I recommend sharpening around the eyes and nose, and you could even sharpen part of the mouth here. And then that would be enough because then it'll look like sort of shallow depth of field, look more intentionally sharpened, right? This image is in focus nicely, but the exposure is too dark. And I think that you made it dark on purpose because you wanted to show like this more down, kind of depressed side or angry or sad side, but it's it's too dark where it gets lost. Like our eye starts kind of glossing over it because there's not enough contrast down there. Okay, so just brighten up your exposure a bit, and it'll still, with the expression that you have and the red background down here, you'll still get that feeling that you're trying to portray without actually darkening the entire image. Okay, but other than that, great work. Thank you. Next up is Alexis. Alexis did Throne of Glass. So this is great. This is really minimal. I'm thinking sort of Paul Rand here. And we have a black and white image. We also have, which is great, wonderful image. Way to go. And your text looks really nice. It's all very balanced for the most part. Um, like it's a little heavy on the lower left side, but that's okay. I love all the negative space, and that's something that was really prominent during that era. So, really nice decision there. I do recommend this during the selection process to cut out this image. Your blade got a bit pixelated and choppy. I'm not sure if it's a low res image or which it might be if you took it with your phone, but that's okay. What I recommend instead is going in with your polygonal lasso tool to cut out this sword to make the edge really sharp and get rid of some of that pixelation. So then you can just select around the outside and then make your selection go around like this. And then you just hit the delete button and you'll get a nice sharp edge and get rid of all that pixelation. And it'll look really good. Okay. And I love this blue background that you chose. It's really nice. Thank you. Next up is Megan. Megan did Crazy Rich Asians. This is lovely. It's super mid-century with all these fun mid-century shapes in here. This color palette is very mid-century. I love the airplane kind of being almost parallel to this welcome sign. And the arrow is just really fun. This shadow that you created on your figure down here is really great. It's a really nice way to tie it into the shapes in the background. These gray lines tie in the black and white in the figure as well as in the airplane. I love this halftone down here and everywhere. Like all of this grain everywhere looks, I'm sorry, not halftone, the grain. The grain everywhere is really nice. It gives it so much texture. And I like this balance that you have up here with this circle versus down here. And it all just came together really lovely. It's awesome. I love it. Way to go. Thank you so much. Next up is Cecilia. Cecilia did Legend of Drizzt Homeland, and this turned out really cool, Cecilia. I love the negative space being applied as hair over the hero's face. It looks way cool. I love it. It's so neat. I love it. And then you have this beautiful halftone that's like it's like it became cubes in a way or something. It turned out really cool. I even feel like I see some coloring in the eyes, really nice effect. I see that you did apply some really beautiful kind of painterly effects in the face. And I love how this halftone is like a gradient that comes up the sweatshirt or the shirt. It's really neat, just really cool. I love it. I love it. Way to go. Great job. Next up is Max. Max did The Road. Max has turned out so great. I love the text in the background. I'm getting sort of Sippy Pinellas vibes from it, with like enlarging, things in the background. Um, your use of text is beautiful. I love this texture on your paper under Good Guys. It's really cool. It turned out really nice. Everything feels very balanced, and I like that you still have like something in the background that's diagonal when you have all these centered objects. It turned out beautiful. I do think that the figure can be more contrasty. He's a bit flat. So I recommend going in there and pumping up the whites a bit, as well as bringing in the shadows, making those a little blacker as well. So then you'll get some more nice contrast there. I like to do that with my levels adjuster. So in the levels panel, you're going to slide the you're going to slide the white slider under the histogram over a bit until you see your lights get brighter. And then you have to balance it out by also sliding that black slider over a bit, but just a little bit, until you see the shadows get even darker and richer. And you'll see some really nice highlights in there. So that'll play nicely off of this black and white paper. I'm sorry, yeah, this grayscale black and white paper at the top there. It'll look really nice. Trust me. All right. Thank you so much. Next up is Anthony. Anthony's book is The Great Gatsby. Anthony, this is so fun. This is very Paul Rand. I love all these fun elements, this window that you created, kind of like in the tutorial. All these shapes, they're fantastic. So, and I like the contrast that you have here is nice. I see that really nice bright white in the shirt and that the black areas are nice and rich and dark. So wonderful job there. Great photo. Good work. So the only things that we don't need are these strokes. So I recommend getting rid of the strokes around this, getting rid of the stroke around the glasses, getting rid of the stroke around the eye, as well as the iris. You just don't need those black strokes. You don't need them. The shapes are strong enough as they are, okay? With this word Gatsby, make it bigger. You've got all this space up here. Don't be afraid to let it get big, okay? Other than that, it's fantastic. Thank you. Next up is Megan. Megan did It Ends With Us. And this is a really lovely photo, Megan. It turned out really nice. I love this this grainy texture. It's like very prominent in this background gradient. It looks really lovely. Really nice. And I like your font that you chose and that you have it behind her head. Really great choices here. Yeah, it all turned out. She's retouched really nicely. And it's all very subtle, but strong, like um, very Sippy Pinellas, very Alexei Brodovich. It turned out great. Thank you so much. Next up is Nathaniel. Nathaniel did Lord of the Flies. Thank you so much for going out and shooting this great picture. I love seeing the Las Vegas desert in your images, in everybody's images. It's just so, I miss it a lot. So it's very nostalgic for me, and Mid-Century Modern is super nostalgic as well. And great choices for your wardrobe. It's a really good photo. It feels a little bit low resolution. I can see some pixelation back here. And so you can fix that by applying more filters to make it even more mid-century modern. You can paint over the background as well. Your face is very dark in the shadows here, so you could use your dodge tool to try to bring out the eyes at least a bit, and then it would, make it so that the blown, the highlight here on your arm and shirt and hat isn't quite so dominant, and the face doesn't get as lost, okay? So yeah, I think I would like to see a little bit more mid-century modern effects applied to this to make it feel more like the requirements in the assignment. Okay, thank you. And last up is Dawn. Dawn did Where the Crawdads Sing, and this is a really fun composition. I get a lot of Paul Rand from this. I love the colors that you chose and all of the imagery. The egrets look really, are they herrings? I think they're egrets. And the photo is really nice. These effects that you applied turned out really great. Very painterly looking. Yeah, and I love it. So I know that you said you had to change from CMYK to RGB to get the effects to work, which was great. I'm glad you figured that out because I forgot to mention that. And then switched it back to CMYK because of the assignment requirements. It still looks very punchy, like very vibrant. It doesn't look like you got a lot of color shift, like muting of the colors. It looks really great. It turned out great, Dawn. Thank you so much. So thank you all. You did such a great job. I can't wait to see the next assignment.